A 35-year-old businesswoman walked into the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority offices and walked out having secured a tender worth 140 million shillings.
Because most of these people who get government tenders and profit from kickbacks, these are individuals who funded some politicians.
Kenyan politics seems to be a gold mine, and a few people are making billions out of it. Take for example Evans Kidero, the former Nairobi County Governor. He gets into office and shortly after, Kidero acquires a phantom Rolls-Royce valued at around 40 million shillings. His monthly income, a basic salary of around 584,000 shillings. Governor Hassan Ali Joho, Bentley Bentayga, valued at around 27.2 million shillings. What about Mrs. Tracy Njoki Kinge, a junior finance officer at the National Treasury, over 18 million shillings in her bank account while on a salary of 50,000 shillings. This nation must then be very wealthy, like extremely wealthy. But how are a few individuals making their millions and billions? That's where tenderpreneurship comes in, where a few well-connected persons are making billions of shillings illegally by acquiring tenders unlawfully. These people are leading a life similar to the narcos drug lords, flying first-class private jets, driving the most expensive cars, gambling in Nairobi's most lavish casinos, and throwing extravagant parties attended by the finest women, simply for supplying nothing. In this video, we dig deeper into the tenderpreneurship schemes costing the country 608 billion shillings each year. My name is Kahiu.
I would say those were not normal or usual circumstances.
The public procurement process in Kenya plays an important role in ensuring effective control and supply of inputs, which are important for all levels of any establishment. However, the problem of poor governance and corruption remains one of the main obstacles to economic development in this country. After the first COVID case in the country was announced on March 13, 2020,
I want to inform you that the Ministry of Health has confirmed the first coronavirus case in Kenya.
The crisis provided various counties and government ministries the cover to go against procurement laws and order goods from companies that had no capacity to deliver. Just after the first infection was announced, billions of shillings were flown into government accounts while many Kenyans processed the shock of the COVID arrival in the nation. First, the country got 78.3 billion shillings from the International Monetary Fund (IMF) to cope with the pandemic. The World Bank then sent 108 billion shillings through wire transfer to the Central Bank of Kenya (CBK) as budgetary support and additional resources to aid in the fight against the deadly virus. Aside from the IMF and World Bank funding, the African Development Bank sent a 22.5 billion shilling boost as a concession loan, and the European Union topped this up with an additional 7.5 billion shillings in form of grants. In total, Kenya received 223 billion shillings in less than 60 days to fight the COVID-19 pandemic.
A 35-year-old businesswoman walked into the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority offices and walked out having secured a tender worth 140 million shillings.
While we got distracted with news and the surging cases of infections, for some few people, the pandemic was not a misfortune. Instead, it was a huge blessing that gave them a financial breakthrough at the expense of taxpayers' money. But was it legal? Definitely not. Was political influence involved? But of course, take for example the case of Ivy Minyo Onyango. Mrs. Onyango, barely 30 years old, walks into the company's registry on January 22nd, 2020 and registers her company by the name of Kilig Limited. A few weeks later, her company is unpicked and offered a tender worth 4 billion shillings to supply personal protective equipment, PPEs. Each kit was to be delivered at an excessive double cost of 9,000 shillings instead of the then current market price of 4,500 shillings. So, how does a 6-month-old company owned by a single individual acquire a 4 billion worth contract to supply goods to one of the most important ministries in the country?
I would say those were not normal or usual circumstances.
It is alleged that Mrs. Onyango was not on her own, and neither was she the main beneficiary. For her to acquire the tender, it took the intervention of a famous Jubilee Party politician who pretends to be the president's right-hand man. Anne Wambere Ngirita, a 30-year-old hairdresser, reportedly supplies air to the NYS and walks out with a staggering 59 million shillings packed in sacks. Mrs. Ngirita, who admitted to have never tendered to supply goods and services to the government, neither had an office nor a business premise. She only used a certificate of registration of business and a KRA tax compliance certificate to get a contract at the NYS. On paper, she was supposed to provide supplies like food, paper, hammers, and firewood. However, she simply supplied nothing and received the payment in an account under her company's name, Anwa Investment. Shop and Buy Limited, yet another up-and-coming company, is registered on February 14th, 2020. Barely 4 months later, the company is handed a 970 million shilling contract to supply PPE kits and KN95 masks and becomes another big beneficiary of the corrupt KEMSA procurement system. This kind of tender-related luck or miracle does not happen even in movies. Acquiring tenders in Kenya is not easy. It's a long procedure that requires various pre-qualifications, and like any other government-related service, several if not thousands of potential suppliers apply for these tenders. So, how then do these recently registered companies with no tender-related history acquire these billion-worth contracts? The truth is, people like Mrs. Ngirita and Mrs. Onyango are just scapegoats that are used as cover-ups in case the deal goes wrong or the illegal contract is publicized.
Who is the person who pulled the strings for you to be able to get a letter in less than 24 hours? You invoice, and in less than around 30 days, your payment has been cleared.
The real beneficiaries of these contracts are well-connected politicians and top government officials. For instance, in the case of Mrs. Onyango, the Nation Investigations Desk found out that a prominent Jubilee politician was the true beneficial owner of the company Kilig Limited. This beneficiary has amassed billions by securing contracts for governmental organizations and selling them to businesses in exchange for a 10% cut. What these main beneficiaries do is find desperate Kenyans like Mrs. Onyango and manipulate them so that in case anything goes wrong, the names of these powerful people remain protected while the axe falls on victims like Ngirita and others. Anti-corruption bodies like the EACC, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, and others must stop playing games with Kenyans and target the real masterminds of tender illegalities. Charging and convicting scapegoats does not seal the loopholes of tenderpreneurs.
As leaders, is really to be responsible in what we're doing. Because we're all one people, we're all one country. And matters corruption really affect every single citizen, wherever they may be.